Does it work?
Yep. Welcome everyone to Social Selling Hour on this December 1st. Hopefully everyone has a nice full belly from Thanksgiving and you're ready to own this December, our last month of 2014. And as a Social Selling Hour, extremely excited. We have some big plans for 2015. So as always, I'm joined by the wonderful Miss Rachel Miller. How are you today, Rachel?
I'm fantastic. Hey, everybody.
So we're excited to have everybody here as always. This has been an exciting 9 months for us from a project and something that we kind of put together, not sure where it was going to go, and now we have the first almost 4 months of guests booked in 2015. So we first off thank everybody that joins not only live on our videos and in the Twitter chat, but also watching the YouTube videos afterwards. All the comments, the SS Hour hashtag now is used multiple times a day, multiple times an hour, and we couldn't be more thankful. Along with that, I am excited to talk about our first guest today. We have Guillaume, CEO and founder of Scoop It, a tool that I am a big fan of, and I was lucky enough to sit down face-to-face with him earlier this year and kind of talk about lots of different things. So we're going to talk fueling your success with content today, social business, a little bit of everything. So welcome to Social Selling Hour.
Hi, Brian. Hi, Rachel. Hi, everyone. Very excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. We're big fans of yours. We know, your team does a really good job of sharing our content as well as kind of promoting and helping us. And we've been friends with Ali for a long time. You're an awesome community manager as well. So give us a little background about yourself, a little bit about Scoop It, and then we'll jump into the questions.
Sure. My name is Guillaume. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 15 years. Previous company was a digital music platform for mobile carriers. We started back close to 15 years ago doing digital music on mobile phones. It became the music platform of Microsoft 6 years ago now. So the background for Scoop It was really around trying to understand what the future of social media and blogging was, and we felt a lot of people were struggling with how do I publish more content. A lot of what people were telling us about their future use of social media and blogging, they said, we get it that if we are, that there's a lot of opportunities around blogging and social media, call it content marketing, call it, social selling, that, people got that there were a lot of opportunities, but the bottleneck seemed that people that were struggling publishing more quality content. And so, and the reason for that was that they were trying to create everything. Everybody was trying to become the next Pulitzer Prize winner, turning themselves into reporters and journalists and creating content. And we felt some people were really smart at doing that, and we felt that, yes, well, we all going to have to create more content, but there was another way to also publish great content online and engage an audience and build an audience. And that way was content curation. And so that was the starting point for Scoop It, the realization that it's not just about the content you create, it's also about the content you curate. And if you do a good job at discovering, finding, giving some context to existing content, there was a lot of great benefits, and there was a way to build an audience, to build engagement, and to build relationships. And so we decided to create a platform that would help people do that through a curation technology that helps you discover content, and also a lightweight, very easy to use publishing platform.
That's great, and I often credit content curation for my social media growth and a lot of the wonderful things that I've been able to be very fortunate about as of recently, because I didn't have a blog or a website 2 years ago, and I had a voice. I'm not shy, everyone who knows me from that side, but I didn't really have the time or figure out a way to blog. So I would take great content from Val Asfar or great content from Ted Rubin or Brian Kramer, and I would put my own say and my own twist on it, and I would share it. And quickly I realized that people were valuing that, and I was able to give a much broader insights and views than I was if I was plugging away blogging, and now I've kind of embraced both the curation and the content creation side. So I love that, and I think it's perfect for our social selling hour community because we talk a lot about the importance of content, a lot about the importance of relationships. But when it comes to curation, I think driving into really where this value proposition exists, I think we really can expand on that. So question one we have is, why is content curation such a necessary activity for social business success today?
Yeah, so first of all, I think we had a very similar experience. Back when we started, I was like, why is it that I don't have a blog? And so the first value proposition is really around, and like I wanted to express myself. It wasn't that I felt, I didn't want to participate. I really wanted to participate. And even worse than that, when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a writer. So I had that thing about content, and my previous startup was around music content. So I've always been in content, but I didn't find it easy to find the time, and I was struggling with what should I write about? What should I publish about? And so I think the first benefit people see around content curation is it's a way to express yourself and express your expertise, show your thought leadership, show that you care about something without adding some noise, but adding some qualification to existing content. So the first benefit is it's time saving. It still takes me, like you, I also started to blog, and I publish on the Scripted blog and on some other blogs. It still takes me, 4 hours, 6 hours to write a good blog post that I'm proud of signing. It takes me usually 20 minutes to add a few comments and things I have to say on what I call a curated post, or what we call a scoop on Scoopit. So a link to an existing piece of content that you enrich with 1-2 sentences or a couple of paragraphs if you feel inspired. I often find that, and that was also the realization we had with Scoopit, is that sometimes you're lacking inspiration. But if you're working on a given topic, you're likely to become an expert on that topic, and you're building up that expertise, and it's very likely you're going to very naturally come out with a couple of things to say on a piece of content that you found interesting. So the first value is to find, to complement your creation, your blogging, with something that is much easier, much faster to do, specifically if you use a tool like Scoopit. But there are a couple of additional benefits that sometimes are overlooked that I think we should talk about. So first of all, I think we need to realize that people, as consumers of content, we now understand content marketing. We understand that brands put content out there and they have a specific agenda. And there was a study that showed that people start to distrust, or not distrust, but be cautious about content that's being put out there by brands. And so there was a study that showed that third-party content is 4 to 7 times more trusted than content that's created by a brand. And it shows that curation also plays a role in building your credibility. If you want to be a trusted resource, you should publish content from somebody else, and you should have a mix. You should have your own content, no question there. But if you don't add third-party content to it, people will not find you as credible as if you have a mix of your own content and some third-party content.
And I think that's that's something we hammer home a lot here on this show, from the idea of trust, and I think it's funny when you think about trust and content, because those two, you wouldn't immediately put those down, but I work. When I talk about personal branding or even employee advocacy, I always talk about the importance of every digital action you take is a way of you telling your story, and that's building your trust. And so I love that you hit that home, and I think that's partially where I think we've taken content curation and taken it to another level, where you're now able to, I'm part of the reason that I've always enjoyed Scoopit is, if I want to do my social listening or even do my social research, I can go back and look at anyone who's using Scoopit and understand all of the content they've shared and what insight they've provided. Because not all content you share do you agree 100% with. And I think that's kind of something that's important. You guys kind of you highlight a lot, not only with your tool, but your philosophy as well.
Yeah, I would say that if there is a piece of content out there that you violently disagree with, you should absolutely curate it and tell your audience why this is wrong, or why you disagree, or put your own context to it. So to me, that's essential, because otherwise, I think as time goes by, we become more and more aware of the fact that people are putting out some content out there because they have a specific agenda. So of course, if you read a white paper from a vendor that talks about the great benefits of this and this, of course they have their own way of making it work. And sometimes you want to read things like that, but sometimes you want to also have a more diverse view of things. And I think if you want to build that trust, you need to think about it, becoming the resource where your audience can learn everything they have to know about a given topic that you've chosen, because that's what's interesting for your potential customers, for instance. So that's a second benefit, and I think there's a third benefit which you and I discussed a lot, which is about how this connects to influencers. We had the story with Rachel on and I'm going to tell the story because I think that reflects exactly how curation can help you build those relationships. So we're talking about how do you connect with influencers, how do you do influencer marketing, and I've seen a lot of people be kind of struggling with that, like should I email those people, like who are the influencers in the first place, how do I connect and build value for them and for me. And so the story with Rachel is actually Rachel wrote a post on curation which had a provocative title on curation, saying it's not all good, there's good and bad around curation, and of course I had to say something about it. And so I did exactly what we discussed. I curated back to one of my Scoop pages, saying how I agreed and also disagreed with Rachel or could add some additional context to it. And I tweeted, of course, mentioning her. And so she picked up my tweets, retweeted it, but also went back to the page I have, which is my curation hub, where I curate those stories and people can very visually see them, which is built on Scoop. And so she tweeted that whole collection, and she felt, she said, hey, there's a lot of great content out there, including my latest blog post on curation. And that's how we started to connect. And so we started a relationship which ended up in me being here. So I think it's a great story on how curating content from influencers you respect in your industry can initiate, will get you in their radar, initiate relationships that you can nurture to create engagement and end up creating content with them.
No, it's a great story, and I'm really happy that it ended up with having you on our show. Couldn't have ended any better. So a little bit more about that. I know a lot of our participants today are familiar with Scoop.it, but can you kind of explain a little bit more how the curation process works with Scoop.it and how it adds, more context to a post and kind of the authority which leads to being a thought leader? Yeah.
So. I think I would start with, when we looked at why do we need a curation platform in the first place, when we looked at this back 3-4 years ago now, a lot of people are saying, well, yeah, I curate because I'm sharing links on Twitter, and I'm making my own selection, and I'm sharing those links on Twitter, and so we realized there were several things that we could do to help. And that we're missing in that process. And I always say that if you're just tweeting links, that's not curation, and you're actually missing out on an opportunity. But the first thing we realize is that finding those links in the first place can be very much time-consuming. So we built a technology which is what we call our smart suggestion engine. And by the way, we service message, but we launched a full revamp of that 10 days ago. And we have lots of great feedback, and so we'd love for more people to send us feedback. But there's a totally new revamp of that tool and that technology that we launched. But the basic idea is you can just enter some keywords, and we'll source content for you. So we crawl more than 30 million web pages every day, and so there's a lot of time saving happening here. It's automating your discovery, and so that's the first part. The second part is enabling you to publish this in a way that's going to have some impact. And the reason I say if you're just tweeting links, you're missing out, is because fundamentally curation should be about bringing people to a place you can call your home for your content. We call that a curation hub. But just like a museum curator doesn't tell you, hey, go away from a museum and see that Picasso painting in Paris and see that Roy Lichtenstein painting in New York. They bring you to an exhibition. They bring you to a place they have finally curated, and that's the concept. And so that's why Scoop It is not just discovery, but there's also a publishing platform. And that content hub can be a page on Scoop It, could be a WordPress blog, could be anything. We're integrated with many systems like WordPress. But you got to bring people back to your own site so you can do a few things. First, you can explain, you can give that insight. What we just discussed, Brian. Like why you agree or disagree with that article. Why it was even important for your audience to invest even just 2 minutes of their precious time reading that article or watching that video. That's super important. And second, if you bring them to your place, then you start building your audience. They can, follow your threads. You can convert them to become a subscriber or a customer. And so that conversion element is very important because otherwise you're sending people away, and curation is not an opportunity to enrich that content and bring them home.
And I think it's fun. I was tweeting out. I'm enjoying the Twitter conversation. A lot going on here. We have lots of previous guests and people kind of sharing about the power of content curation and the idea of the point of being social is being using social media is being social and sharing more than just your own opinion. I think that's really a big part of social media. But I also think when you're sharing content and a link, you're losing a lot of the value of what does that mean to you? What is your insight? Because I don't follow someone so that I can see every link that they like. I want to know their insight. I want to know their opinion. And without the curation element of it, I always feel like I just get a whole lot of links. And to Rachel's blog post, what's the percentage of those links that a lot of these people are sharing that they've even read, right? So I also think content curation almost adds a little bit of validity to a link that's shared, because if you're going to give me a paragraph summary or a paragraph on your view of this piece of content, you've probably read it, or you've at least skimmed through the beyond just the title. And I think that's a big part of why if someone shares a link and it has Scoop It in it, or Flipboard, or Metal, or a lot of the curation sites that I really appreciate, I have a much higher possibility that I'm going to read that because I feel like they took the time to curate it, therefore they've read it and added value. It's not just an RSS feed that's dumped onto their their social feed.
Yeah, and let me give you a stat that kind of backs that up. What we measure on Scoop It is that on average, per visitor that clicks on a link that was curated through Scoop It, people read or consume 3 stories on average per visit. So if you think about it, it's a lot because if you're just reading a link, then the best thing that can happen is they click on that link and they go to the New York Times or TechCrunch or wherever that link is from, and then they're gone. And maybe if you're lucky, and if, they'll remember that link was brought to you by Brian or Rachel or Guillaume. But that's very unlikely because they've been taken from a Twitter experience to the original media, and that's just one link. So the stat of 3 on average means that now you're bringing people home, and they're going to look at all the different stories, and because you've added your insight to it, they're going to click on 3 different stories on average. And for some people, it's even more than that. And plus, this page is now your page, so you can brand it, and they can see you. Your face over it, so the chance that they'll memorize that, oh, hey, yeah, that's from this guy Brian. He knows a lot about social selling and influence. The chance they'll memorize it is much higher. So that for us is very important. And there's another stat to this which is also important, which is that for now we've talked about curation in the context of social media, but there's also an important aspect to it, which is one of the struggles we found back when we started working on Scoop It with social media was that how would people discover all of that content I put out there?
Yes.
Okay, so
that's probably the most popular question I get to people ask me on a regular basis. So I love to hear that.
Sometimes on social media I feel okay, I'm putting content out there for people who already follow me, but I'm kind of preaching to the choir because they already know me, they already followed me. So that's great. We need to engage and create conversations. But how about the millions of people who don't know yet that they want to follow me? So at least I that's the utopia, right? So now that you put that content on your content hub, well, that content hub is now indexed in Google and in search engines. And what this means is that people who are actively looking for answers to their questions, for content on their keywords, can discover you through that content, which is not the case if you're, there are just links on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, because those pages tend not to be, indexed very well when they are even indexed and when they're not blocked by privacy settings. So now that it's public and it's indexed and it's very well organized because you've given it your own organization, your own context to it, you have people who want to be following you, which will eventually follow you, who discover you because of the content you've published. And that's eventually what you want to do. You want to amplify your audience you have on social media through the content you publish.
Yeah, I think if our participants today don't take away anything but this, creating a home or a hub is to your benefit. I think when you're sharing links of posts that you like, you're helping out that author, you're helping out that brand, you're sending them traffic. But when you use a tool like Scoop It or Metal, you're building your brand, and I think that's the most important thing. You are increasing conversions, like you said, whether it's just more followers or bringing traffic back then to your brand's website.
Or even providing value for, you hear people say, well, I'm not going to curate someone else's content because what value does that have for me? And I think part of that story comes, if you're a quote-unquote thought leader, I don't think anyone's a thought leader that tells me they know everything and they don't listen to other people, they don't read other books, they don't follow certain blogs. And I think part of that is, if you really want to validate your stance, you should find great thought leaders and similar people with similar philosophies, curate it and give it a home to where it's attached to your name. And I thought, your point of SEO value, I don't think that can be understated. I mean, when we share on Facebook and we share on LinkedIn, and someone's, Rachel is a chief listener. I believe that social listening is the #1 thing that I do more. I spend more time on that than anything else on social. And the reason that is because I believe all of these digital actions that someone makes really tells the story more than that 140-character tweet that they might put out. And part of that is I want to know what content they share, what content they like, what their view of is certain content. So I think that's I think the SEO element, and the other piece that I don't know if the audience really caught there is, I get that question a lot. Brian, where do you find content? And I'm a geek for tools. I got apps. I got stuff going everywhere. But one of my favorite parts of Scoop It is I can actually suggest content into your scoop, into your curated bucket, as well as really filter down the noise. So I can have it giving me a hashtag from Twitter, a search algorithm from Google News, my favorite blog RSS, but I can also have it eliminating certain terms or eliminating, and all of those filters really allow me to really find great content without wasting all of that time. Because I think when it comes down to it, when someone looks at curation, it's a time saver for finding content, sharing content, and getting your voice out there. And I'm a big fan of it for those 3 reasons, amongst the others.
Yeah, a couple of things to add on what you said about thought leadership. There was a great piece that I actually curated, which was, if you want to lead, read. Because no thought leader no leader in general is going to be just depending on his own opinions, and there are it's always about being educated about what happens out there. But the second example I want to give to kind of back up this idea that you have to curate other people's content, and that's going to be good for you, which can be I understand why it might be counterintuitive at the beginning, and there's been some debates a couple of years ago. I think now people agree that it helps. I think if you look at what happens in the media space, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to become better media. As individuals, as brands, we're trying to become media. Companies are becoming media. We are starting to be thought leaders and being our own personal media. So because I realized that, and that was the vision, we looked a lot at what happened in the media space. And if you look, what are the major hits in the new media of the last 5 to 7 years? The Huffington Post, BuzzFeed, Upworthy, Business Insider. I mean, there are lots of examples, but all of those new media have in common one thing: they don't produce 100% of their content. Some of them do produce content and mix it with aggregated or curated content, like the Huffington Post. Some of them produce zero, like Upworthy. They're just curating excellent stuff, and they're very good at putting out those headlines, and they're adding a lot of value through the rewriting of the headlines and the context they're adding. But look at it this way: those guys created tremendous value. Those companies are valued, by the way, amazing amounts, much more than traditional media, and they've used curation. So what is true for them is also true for us. We shouldn't try to become media in the old-fashioned 20th century type of media.
So when you think about content curation, and you have us sold, Rachel and I are fans, and we're, that's something that we all believe in. But our community, there's lots of people talking about here about using content, and for personal branding, using content to share your voice, using it to amplify your brand that you work for. And with question 3 here, we're talking about a collaborative content curation. Because I love, if there's probably one buzzword I love the most, it's collaboration, because I really love and believe in the power of it. But how do we get people, or how do we encourage those that haven't jumped on the curation train? Maybe they're social media users, maybe they're social sellers, but they really haven't figured out the true power of content curation. What are the best ways to encourage this new behavior? Because although we've embraced it, I still think it is a new way of thinking, because you're almost advertising and promoting someone else's original content, which isn't native, I think, in traditional business.
So I think there are a couple of things that are, to make the discussion very concrete. There are a couple of things that I think anyone who's listening can think about. First, that's what we discussed on building relationship with influencers. You're trying to grow an audience in some industry. There are some people who are influential for your target audience. Curating their content will put you in their radar. And you can curate also lists of content that they have created, and that will create engagement, that will create discussions, and over time, starting by that, you can create content with them, co-create content with them, or co-curate content with them. So I think if you think if anyone here listening think about, I need to have an influencer strategy, there's a high chance that this will, a good first step you can take in any influencer strategy is start by curating content from the influencers you've identified in your market. That's a very good and natural first step. The second thing, which we've been seeing also as a trend over the last 6 to 12 months, starting from larger companies, but also now scaling down to mid-sized companies, is how do I get my coworkers to actually care about content? We back, I would say 18 months ago, we were in the middle of content marketing trend, and people started to recruit content directors, content strategists, and still in a lot of companies, content is one person's job. Hey, you're the content person. You're blogging, you're getting, you're in charge, and that's great. I think that's logical. You want to have somebody accountable for the content marketing results, but that doesn't leverage all of the expertise that a company has. And so, we've seen companies come to us saying, you know what, the experts in my company are not the marketers. They're the engineers. They're the people in the field. Not saying that marketers don't have expertise, but they have marketing expertise. They don't have expertise.
I think that's what you were saying. No, just kidding.
Yeah, we love marketers, but we had that example of a technology giant that said our experts, our technical experts, have great stuff to say. They don't have time to write, so they have all those problems we discussed. They are not reporters. They are not writers. They are engineers, or they are technicians, and they don't know how to express this. Well, if you try to get them to blog, you're going to fail. You're very likely to fail if you want other people in your company to blog. It's a struggle, and we've discussed with many people who say, hey, I want my CEO to blog, I want my engineers to blog, and it's painful because people don't have time. But the thing is, people read content. And they are doing that. We all read content. We all read content about our industry. So it's much easier for those people to be involved in a collaborative curation effort where they curate what they find interesting, and this can stay private, and you can have a workflow, and that's what we started to build, over the last 12 months on Scoopit, is helping companies create a workflow around curation so that employees could crowdsource interesting pieces of content for marketing to reshare outside the company, so curate that internal curation. Also, it could also work the opposite way. When the content team does a great job curating content and creating content hubs internally, it makes it easier for employees to reshare and solve the other problem, which is how do I tap into the social networks of my employees? How do I sharing?
Let me jump on that one real quick, because I think that's like one of my most successful social selling, social business solutions that I ever was able to accomplish was I couldn't get buy-in, so I decided to go to my CEO of and the CEO was of a Fortune 500 company, and I said, I need you to blog, and he said, I don't have time, and I said, okay, I understand that. I was like, but can you curate? And his first answer was like, no, I'm not going to spend time curating. And I flipped the question back and said, well, what do you read every day? And he's like, well, there's three websites that I read every single morning, every single day. And I said, well, you have an opinion, because Lord knows I don't know many CEOs that don't have an opinion or a vision. I was like, let's just share these internally, and we were doing it via email at the time. We didn't have a tool like Scoopit, and we were sending. So what he was doing, he was taking his Wall Street Journal article that he read, his Forbes article, giving his insight and sharing the link. And we quickly we're no dummies in our group, but we took that content and we shared it out publicly because we knew that this was our CEO's, who he thought of as thought leaders. If it was a Richard Branson post, or if it was and all of a sudden when we started sharing that, he's like, wow, these people, I didn't need to create a 1,000 word article. I already had, there was a great piece of content, and that only amplified his personal brand. But I think that was really the turning point for him to say, oh, let's get all of our employees now sharing what they're reading, because now it just gives you more of a vision of what all of our internal thought leaders are listening to, reading to. So I think that's an exciting element, because to me, when the amount of time you can spend curating 3 posts is probably less than it would take you to write, especially for someone like me who writes. I talk fast but write slow. Like that. I think that's a really valuable lesson that we can kind of instill if you're looking for leadership buy-in. Leaders are already reading it, even if it's a book. Like I've seen this is a shout out to Thomas Power over there in the UK. He reads the newspaper every morning and takes pictures with his iPhone, takes the picture and tweets it out. And part of it is he curates his own comment about that picture every single time. And I think that's just an element of curation that we should embrace. So
there was a post that I liked about should content be everybody's job in the company, and I think it's very hard to make people create content and to have it, and it shouldn't be everybody's job, because you want your salespeople to sell, your engineers to code, or however your organization is structured. But everybody reads, and so I think the way to get people to make content everybody's job is to tell them, well, start by curating what you read that you think is interesting for either the rest of the company or our audience in general.
Oop, did we freeze?
Oh yeah, I was talking to the mute button. The mute button wasn't having it. Sorry about that. So I just wanted to pull in a couple of things that I found on Twitter. I think there's lots of great things. Curating content from your influencers, like Tina said on there. I think that's a very big element. If you want your influencers to share your content, I'll give an inside nugget. Share their content first, and it doesn't take much. Curate their content. And the best part, and one of the things I like about Scoopit and the curation tools, is not only can you share their content, you can share it on your site. So not only do I as an influencer get better visibility, but now I'm getting visibility on another site with new traffic and new eyeballs. And what did that take from you as a brand or as a marketer? All you had to do is you already read the great content, you already identify this person as an influencer. Now you're just sharing it on your site and actually it's providing dual value. I know Rachel does that at Pipeliner. They do a great job of not only adding guest blogs, but they also curate and share great content from a standpoint of the people that they believe are influencers in their market.
Yeah, actually, that's a perfect segue into question 4, because as you said, yeah, I'm a big believer in amplifying the message of our community. I know for Social Selling Hour, I'm always sharing posts from Andrew Hutchison and Terry. I mean, they're publishing now frequently on LinkedIn, so it's a great way to, as Brian says, show you care, and to kind of keep it rolling because they in turn share our message. So question 4 is, a powerful effect of content curation is influencer engagement. So let's kind of dive a little deeper. How can influencers and advocates amplify your message?
Yeah, so I think what we've said is before you get influencers to actually share your content, start by sharing their content or curating it, and there's all the benefits that Brian explained. So very concretely, on Scoop It, what I do is we have a list of influencers that we look at. We use Scoop It to kind of source content, which very naturally when it comes in the Scoop It suggestion engine, it's likely to be coming from one of those influencers. We curate it and then we share it to our social networks by mentioning the author. I mean, curation anyway should be mentioning the author, but we more than that. We praise them. We highlight them for having created a piece of content, and that's how we initiated a lot of the connections. And to maybe take a step back a little, as an entrepreneur, I often get the questions of like, how do you get the first 1,000 users for your product? And Scoop It was just that. For the first 1,000 users were people who, it was just influencer marketing. We went to people who were blogging about the future of social media curation, and we talked to them, and that's how we started to create those connections. I don't think there's a silver bullet with influencer marketing. You cannot buy you cannot buy influence. You cannot say, I want the top 1,000 influencers on my market to share my content. That doesn't exist. You have to start building those relationships, and a great way to get is actually to start by giving. To get, you have to give, and I think that's what happens when you take that first step with curation. And I think over time you start realizing that, hey, there are guys which are really aligned with our message, and then you can start having conversations where, like, why don't you contribute to our blog? Would you be interested in participating in a piece we would co-create? Lee Oden is a great influencer and author, and he speaks about participation marketing being a big trend for 2015. And I encourage you, guys, to check out what he wrote on this, because he believes that as you start thinking of your content strategy as a collaborative process between you, your influencers, your customers, your employees, then you start to realize how much more leverage you can have, not just by leveraging other people's content and not having to produce it, but also by enlarging your distribution to their own channels. If your employees reshare all your content, then that's more people who are seeing it. If your influencers participate, then they're likely to reshare. And so what we do a lot, building on those curated pieces, is we start to create pieces that are going to be opinions from 10 different experts on a given topic. And those posts tend to be not only more credible because it's not just our own opinion, but we've done a bit of work of asking what people thought about the specific issue, but they tend to be more reshared because then people have skin in the game.
Well, I think that you mentioned Lee Oden, and I'm a big fan of Lee Oden and how he talks about influencer marketing. And I think too often I'm doing a lot of stuff with influencers lately, and they say, well, I don't know who my influencers are. And one of the greatest ways to really figure that out is if you share their content or you curate their content, see if it resonates with your community. And really, an influencer isn't an influencer because of the number of followers they have. They're an influencer because of their relationship with the community and their insights and thought leadership on certain topics. And I think by curating that content, giving it a home, and allowing your community to engage on it, it's a great. I mean, that's your A/B test right there to see if someone's actually influential. Compared to, okay, they have 400,000 followers, but nobody in my community reads any of their content. So is that really an influencer to my community, or is that just someone that paid for a lot of followers, or maybe they have, a lot of followers in a different...
and I would recommend actually reversing the process compared to what I hear a lot about. A lot of people are thinking about, okay, who are the influencers on our market? And that's a good question to have, and there are tools for that. But I think, reversing the process and looking at what is the content on the keywords that my audience is interested in. What is the content that gets traction? And that's what we've been trying to focus the suggestion engine, the content engine of Scoop It around, is like what are the pieces that people are sharing that are getting some traction that you should care about and that you should curate too. And that's how we discovered people who were not in the influencers books or lists, but they were having 200 comments every time they published a blog post. And I remember, those people for us were super important because they were being listened and they had real great conversations. And we didn't care whether they had a CLAT score of this much or that much, or whether how many followers they had. They had engagement, and we loved their content, and that's how we start building a relationship. So content is actually a great way to connect. And is a great measure of influence. If, your influencers, you should know them because they publish some great content that you want to curate.
Yeah, and I think that's the that you want to curate, right? I think that's also another one, because for me, if someone's identified as an influencer, yet the brand handle or the brand site has never shared any of their content, I question where that is an influencer, and why haven't you identified and helped both of these people in that room. And I know Daniel Newman just threw out the term micro-influence, so those people on a certain topic. And I love that that idea, because I think that's really where we're going now. Because although this is a social selling hour and we're talking content marketing, we had Tamara on talking about relationships. We've had David Meerman Scott and Dave Stein on talking about sales elements. And I think all of these things are important under the social selling hour, but not one person is ideally influential in every one of these topics to every one of these brands that are part of our community. I think that's really a telltale element here when it comes to influencing content.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's I love the term micro-influence, because I think that's a lot of what we've seen happening. Back when we started, there were the superstars of social media, the people who had hundreds of thousands of followers, and a lot of people were looking at that. And I think CLAT was a lot about getting some spotlight on those people. And but I think now we're realizing it's a long tail, topic centric model that's important. You want to connect with people who are and a lot of the people using Scoop It are B2B marketers, and they're looking at being very precise and narrow, focused on they might have 5,000 people they want to reach out to, and so I love this idea of micro-influence, because I think it's super important. It's actually more important to have someone who has genuine engagement with 200 people than somebody who's followed but not retweeted by a million people.
And I would like to throw it out there that it's easy to do, right? So I mean, we will talk about all the fine-tuned things, but I had a lot of questions coming in on Twitter, just people asking, Brian, where's your Scoop It page? How do you add things to Scoop It and those kind of things? And I will share a lot of those details after the episode. But if you look at my bar up in my Chrome browser, I mean, it's a Scoop It one. I have a Flipboard one. I have a Pinterest. I have a Google Plus, and it's as easy as me sharing all the content I find to each one of those places. But one of the other things I like about Scoop It is I can actually use Scoop It instead of going to each one of those other ones, to Google Plus, Pinterest, LinkedIn individually. Once I scoop something, I can actually share it across all of those other ones, and I can customize each one of those messages. So I'll repeat that again, because that matters a lot to me. Is there's nothing, I always talk about it, and I've been guilty of it sometimes as well, is there's nothing worse than a 140-character post being shared on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, the exact same message, the exact same, because you're not even taking advantage of all of those elements, and what works on Google Plus doesn't work on Facebook. And the nice thing about Scoop It is once I have that article in Scoop It, I can customize each one of those content and what that status update looks like for each platform. So I just want to make sure, I know I've got a lot of questions coming in on Twitter, and I will get to those after the show, but I wanted to make sure to highlight that because it's one of my favorite elements of your tool for sure. So let's jump into question 5. We have about 15 minutes left. I'm loving we have about 30 people watching live on Google Hangout, as well as a booming Twitter chat that it's hard to keep up. Thankfully, Rachel's sharing and curating a lot of stuff just via Twitter on our community. But when you think about content curation, I know you made the point, and I think I told you this either when we were face-to-face or when we were talking earlier. I remember adamantly over 2 years ago saying, I refuse to create content. I am not a blogger. I do not write. And I will even admit that part of the reason I do that iSocial Talks video series is because it gives me a chance to do video and talk rather than writing, and I much rather create this kind of content than I would writing, and I'm learning how to do both. But when you think about content curation and really it being everyone's job, how does that really fit in, to a small business where every minute matters, to where a large business where you have to have that trust factor? How do you think of that, as we get into our final question here, as far as how is content curation really fit for the every employee?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I mean, we discussed that already, but I want to make that concrete. So we have that example of a Fortune 500 company, really huge company, but what they were trying to do was that they had a small team which was in charge of creating some impact, and so they're a big IT company. They sell to CIOs and their teams. And they had tried to come out with, a newsletter that would, keep them, give them some brand awareness and top of mind. The problem was that, CIO are very technical. They want to, get some very specific content, and so they didn't find a way to get the marketing team really finding content that resonated with people. And they said, well, we got to give it to the experts. We got to get the content from the experts, and they hit that problem. It's, no time to blog, just like you were mentioning with the CEO earlier. So they gave Scoop It to those people, and they said, now every time you find something you read that you like, you can click on the Scoop It bookmarklet. It's the button that you can install in any browser, and just this will send it to the marketing team. And if you have some comments, you can enrich that. And so that first part of the process is something they made private, which I think relaxes a lot of people from, am I going to do something wrong? Is this going to go and destroy the company's reputation if I, press the wrong button? So they started initially with 30, 40 different experts. So compared to the size of that company, really a small team, and now they have 100. But they are crowdsourcing all of that content, and then they build newsletters. And so the marketing team now, curates that first batch of content, personalized newsletters for the CIO of Walmart, of State Farm, of PepsiCo, and they are making those newsletters beautiful. But the content itself and the comments and the insights come from the experts. So it's really the technical guys talking to the technical guys, and the marketing team in between, just working on distribution and making it more impacting. And I think so. That's a huge company example, but we've seen a lot of SMBs also use Scoop It this way. Say, we have people in the field, we have people in engineering, we have people doing customer support, and those people have interesting stories, and we wanna have them participate, and they also want to have those people reshare the stories that have been curated by the marketing team. So I think what we'll see happening is we're going to see a workflow around curation. If you think about it, in any company, everybody reads content, and that's the time that your coworkers are investing, and that's the time that's wasted if nobody does something with that piece of content. We always say that in curation, when you've read, you've done 80% of the work, and so Scoop It makes it easy for the remaining 20% to actually bring value to the company, and so that's the type of workflow that even SMB should be considering having.
And I think, even from a SMB perspective, a lot of SMBs, especially that I work with, they'll say, well, my team doesn't really actually read a ton of content because they're so busy. And I always ask, well, do they like content on Facebook? And they'll kind of like look at me and be like, well, I'm sure they do. They're browsing Facebook and someone shares a great article. And Facebook has the nice save feature now, and I use a tool called Pocket. But one of my habits is I pocket my article to go to read later, and then when I go in to read later and I read the article, and if it has value, I add it to a Scoop It. And that workflow doesn't take much time. And when you're a small business already doing the reading part, which is the long end of the stick, now you can actually not only find great content, but you're actually contributing to the well of content. Because I think we all have heard that content is king, but I think it's still hard to find great content. So being able to find great content, I think, is extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in short, I think the way to make content everybody's job is to have curation hub that people can contribute to or reshare from, and that's a way to get everybody more comfortable with the content strategy of the company. And yes, everybody reads. Or everybody should read, content on your industry.
And my little tip that I'll share with everybody is don't be afraid to share the same article several times. Frequently, I'll post the same blog post, but I'll just rephrase the title because not everybody is clicking when you share it the first time. And if it's something that you have read, you found value in it, and you think your community and network will as well, then definitely keep sharing it and track the engagement.
And I think that's actually a great point as well on this whole idea, is because we even talk about I often get really amazed, or I feel lucky that I get my old blog posts, because I don't write a lot. But when I get old blog posts being shared, while I'm talking about this, one of my blog posts I posted 2 months ago is being shared on Twitter right now by some people that I'm like, wow, that's important. But because my content curation has a home and my content has multiple homes, I think your ability to have your content found by different areas, different people, even within, I like to think I'm pretty in touch with the industry. But if I type in social selling and I'm going to curated content on Scoop It that is social selling focused, I'm amazed how many times I find stuff that's that I would have never came across, because as much as most people like to disagree, I don't stare at Twitter all day looking for a perfect content. So I think that's another one of those aspects, and the SEO element, the building the relationships. I think these are all wonderful things. I think you and I we had a great time discussing how this can empower employee advocacy, how this can really empower social selling, how marketers don't have to say, I don't know what content to create, that empower their team to, even if it's not publicly sharing it, and the marketer still wants to have the button to authorize, getting all of that content into one home is a huge time saver in the long run.
Yeah. And if you think about it, the lifetime of a tweet is probably 15-20 minutes. There's been numerous studies in this, so if it's and the chances that 100% of your audience are right there at the right moment watching your tweet, that doesn't exist. And so, what happens to me all the time is I have content I curated 6-9 months ago being reshared again because, somebody found it through a search, or, somebody's been crawling my Scoop It page, or using filters or tags. We have different ways for people to kind of self-serve themselves with your curated content. And I regularly see that as a mention on Twitter, something that I published 9 months ago. And that doesn't happen when you're just tweeting links.
Well, I think that's a great way to end it, really, on the idea that we were talking about the value of not only the content you're curating, but the lifespan of that content, and really how it can empower. My favorite thing is trying to find different ways or unique ways to tell a story that the brand really cares about. And the Honda example has been flying through Twitter today. They had Skeletor take over their handle, and I thought it was a very unique way of all of a sudden humanizing a car brand, which we probably, I wouldn't have been following Honda and probably wouldn't have been caring about what they're sharing on Cyber Monday, but they've not only attached my feed, but I'm now social listening to their hashtags. So I think finding ways to stand out from the noise, get your content not only read, but get your voice heard, including when it comes to thought leadership. Or one of the questions I had from someone last week was, how do I become an influencer? and I started writing about it, and it turned into like, I mean, I think I could go on forever, but one of those elements was like, find those people that philosophy that you agree with and start curating their content, because that starts to get you in their feed. It starts to show you that you're not only listening, but you're attached to some people that you believe in. So I think those are all huge, valuable lessons. We couldn't thank you enough for being a guest. We've had Twitter has been going crazy. I can't keep up with all the stuff that's going on Twitter. Everyone that's tuning in live now on Google Plus, as well as watching on replay on YouTube, hopefully in the future. But thank you so much for joining us today. Rachel and I really appreciate not only your thought leadership, but the fact that you took out time from running your company, a small business there in San Francisco that you're growing, to engage with the community. So where can people get a hold of you? What are some things that you want to just kind of share out there before we sign off for the day?
So you can reach me at on Twitter, GDECUGIS. And if you want to shoot me an email, I'm Guillaume at Scoopit. So GUILLAUME at scoop.it. And we're constantly, we think we're just at the beginning of this. We've been turning 3 weeks ago, and it feels, for a startup, it feels like a long time, but we still think there's a lot to be done. So as we're always very eager to listen and have feedback, and listen about where people are taking content curation and a tool like Scoopit. What are their needs and what are things we can do better? There's lots of stuff we have in store to make this collaborative curation even better and better, constantly improving. So feel free to shoot and send feedback.
Yeah, and I'll definitely give a shout out, to the Scoopit. I remember when I first kind of jumped on Scoopit, the idea of how everything was filtered, how things were laid out, really, how you can customize your scoops, all those things were foreign for me, and I was learning. I was not a marketing background, and your team does an amazing job of not only engaging, but I'm very blessed to be part of the Facebook group as well. That I'll give a shout out to Marketing Hits. He's one of the best out there. I'll make sure to tweet him out there. If you want to see a great use of Scoopits from a user perspective, not a Scoopit employee or Scoopit, Marketing Hits does an amazing job at sharing great scoops and great content across the board. And once again, thank you, everyone. Next week we have Jim Clausen from IBM Social Business will be on as our guest. We're really excited to have him on, talking about the 360 network and really how all of these things kind of play together. And it's kind of as we're winding down 2014 and we're recapping all these great guests that we've had on our show over the last 9 months, Jim's going to do a great job of kind of tying things together. So I think that is all the housekeeping I have. Rachel, anything else on your side?
Nope, that's it.
Yeah, Rachel,
except that following Jim Clausen, we have Jim Keenan. It's like the month of Jims.
That's true. Yeah, there we go. So we have back to back. But once again, thank you. We really appreciate it. Make sure everybody checks out Scoopit. I shared my link out there. I'd happy to share tips and tricks on there. And we can't thank you enough for joining us for this hour. And next time on San Francisco, I'll make sure to hit you up for sure.
Thanks for the opportunity. It's great. Bye, guys.
Bye.